what were your symptoms? What did you present with, and how did you get to that diagnosis?
I got to that diagnosis because I've been struggling with it most of my entire life. I restricted. I wouldn't eat. I would go sometimes an entire day without eating anything. And I was hungry. I knew I was hungry, but in a way, I think, I kind of wore it as a badge of honor that I was like this person in a larger body not eating. And people in my life would say, oh, Tess, she doesn't eat that much. And, I kind of normalized that, which is my bad.
We need to address the elephant in the room. No pun intended. Kind of intended. Anyway, just to get out of the way, man's been a bit busy, but I'm back, and I just want to say thank you to my new subscribers. Thank you for joining me. My name is Joanne. So if you enjoy any parts of this video, make sure you leave a like. If you disagree with this video, leave a dislike, whatever. So yeah, let's just get straight into the video. I have to admit, I am someone who likes dark and inappropriate humor, but when talking about this subject, I will refrain, as hard as that might be, because interestingly, I actually did learn quite a lot while I was researching for this video. I actually want to provide some depth when talking about Ryan Megan Hoven, aka Tess Holliday. And after much thought and deliberation, I have come to the conclusion that Tess Holliday is an attention-seeking, nonsensical narcissist. Yeah, I said it. So yeah, stick around to find out why. So recently, Tess Holliday made the bombshell announcement that she is in fact anorexic. And I'm sure, like many of you were looking at her like, come again? So my basic understanding of anorexia is basically someone who has a very severe, for the rest of the video, I will be saying ED because YouTube doesn't like when I use those words. Basically someone who looks very thin, very unhealthy, who obsesses over their weight, to the point of having body dysmorphia where they think they look bigger than they actually are. None of that applies to Tess Holliday when I look at her. Now let's actually look at the definition of anorexia nervosa. So according to NHS,
anorexia is an eating disorder and serious mental health condition. People who have anorexia try to keep their weight as low as possible by not eating enough food or exercising too much, or both. This can make them very ill because they start to starve. They often have a distorted image of their bodies, thinking they're fat even when they're underweight. Men and women of any age can get anorexia, but it's most common in young women and typically starts at the mid-teens.
I've read that the actual definition, it's still not connecting, still not making sense. However, I did come across a subtype of anorexia that I'd never heard of before, which is called atypical anorexia.
This specific subtype of eating disorder is defined as having anorexic features with no elements of low body weight. So, for example, someone with atypical anorexia nervosa can be terrified of weight gain and becoming fat. They may also eat abnormally or display specific disordered eating behaviours, including restricting food groups and calorie counting, as well as avoiding functions and events involving food.
So it is possible for someone who's overweight to have atypical anorexia. Now, I read these definitions for a reason, so don't forget it. I really like to stress that Tess didn't initially come out saying she had atypical anorexia. She said she had anorexia nervosa, exhibit A. Just from the basic understanding of anorexia that I have, and just from seeing things growing up in the news and in documentaries, I find it really insulting and disrespectful to people that have actually had to deal with this ED and their loved ones. I can't imagine dealing with something like that, and for someone like Tess Holliday to essentially be making this all about herself instead of the actual ED that it is, I just find it really sickening. She's even said in interviews that people who have actually had to deal with anorexia nervosa have reached out to her and sent her messages basically saying the same thing, like, how dare you come out and say you have this thing? I've had loved ones who've had to deal with this, and you're here pretty much trivializing it.
There was a gentleman today that said, I held my best friend who passed away at 90 pounds. I don't know what that is translate. And, how dare you lie about this? And that's really hard to hear, but this is my reality and this is my truth.
So instead of highlighting these other people with this ED, she then kind of diverts the conversation to talk about herself. I found this interview with Good Morning Britain to be very interesting. You'll find that she just can't help talking about herself and bring the conversation back to centering herself. It's just all me.
I know I've been on your program a lot over the years,
Yeah.
not in person, but you guys have talked about me a lot. Susanna, you have, always held it down for me, so thank you. But, everyone is pretty familiar with my story, but to hear that I was struggling with, what I've been dealing with, I know is really shocking, but I'm healthier and happier than I've been in my entire life. I think that the pandemic was really a blessing for myself because it allowed me to slow down for the first time in my entire career and really reflect back on myself. And it was through that kind of downtime that I realized that something wasn't okay with me.
Now, this Good Morning Britain interview was done after her initial announcement, so I guess she had time to correct herself by saying she does have atypical anorexia. Like I mentioned before, I do realize that atypical anorexia can present in people who are overweight, but what I also read was the two biggest indicators of atypical anorexia is eating abnormally, so restricting food groups or severe calorie counting, and also having an intense fear, almost terror, of gaining weight. Now, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, but the author of The Not So Subtle Art of Being a Fat Girl doesn't look like she falls under any of that criteria. And there's a long list, including not eating out in public, wearing baggy clothes, and even having your period stopping. So going back to that Good Morning Britain interview, I really want to emphasize the point that Dr. Hilary made. I believe he's like the on-call doctor that they have on the show to give like medical advice and things like that of that nature.
But you can restrict yourself from eating for days and then binge,
and then eat the wrong thing.
And hence the overlap with bulimia.
Right.
So it's about abnormal eating patterns all the time. That she's now eating more frequently, but the right foods and the right amounts.
Nourish
and that's
yourself.
the difference.
Yeah.
So you'll see that he acknowledges that restrictive eating is a part of this ED. But he then goes on to say there is also such a thing as binge eating. I think he was heavily hinting and implying that Tess Holliday does something called binge eating. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no way you've made it to 35 years old at the size that you are by restrictive eating. In other words, you don't become morbidly obese by essentially starving yourself for years. Like, don't insult my intelligence, I'm sorry, but like people all across the world who are actually starving or going days without eating, they're not morbidly obese. So stop trying to like create this cognitive dissonance in people's minds by saying, my friends eat more than me, but they're thinner than me. Like, no sis. In my mind, this is just my opinion of course, what's more likely to be happening is, yeah, as she says, she might go a day without eating or long periods without eating, but then after a while she binge eats. Like a lot. This is why I low-key miss seeing Piers Morgan on this show, because can you imagine how different this interview would have gone? To be honest, she probably wouldn't have even shown up, but yeah, there we go. She goes on to these cookie cutter programs because she wants people to feed into her lies and praise her for her woe is me act. What's interesting about Tess Holliday's situation is it actually really reminds me of Trisha Paytas, who is a YouTuber. She actually describes going even a whole week without eating, or she'll essentially starve herself for a period of time, but then she will binge, and she will binge for the whole world to see, but that's not the case in itself.
I started binge eating when I was about 13, I would say. And that's kind of how I maintained my weight. So I thought I was fat, so I wouldn't eat for like 4 days. Okay, and I knew on the 5th or 6th day, well, sometimes 5 days, I guess, the week, and then the weekend I would eat whatever I want. And I did this from middle school all the way through my senior year in high school. And in high school it got a little worse, but in middle school I would go 5 days without eating, basically, maybe have like, my mom had Slim Fast and I would maybe drink a Slim Fast, but I wouldn't eat. And then on the weekend, I would get everything. My mom would take us to the movies. I'd get popcorn, nachos, and pretzels. And then I would get candy. And then I'd ask my mom to get us dinner afterwards. And then after dinner, I would be like, can we go to Taco Bell? Like, I would just eat, and consume all I could for 48 hours. And then on Monday, I would go back to not eating.
I'd also like to really point out who Tess Holliday's dietitian is. So her name is Anna Sweeney.
I reached out to the dietitian who initially is the one that told me, hey, I think you need to see somebody, because if I could diagnose you, I would diagnose you as anorexia type A. And
now this woman is a real trip. Like, I won't go too much into it, but instead I'm just going to read some of her Instagram posts and, you can be the judge. A reminder, 0 health conditions affect only humans in fat bodies. 0. That makes no, that makes no sense. It's like saying 0 health conditions affect only smokers. Well, of course, people who don't smoke can get lung cancer, but the likelihood is a lot more increased if you do smoke. Like, a portion size is whatever you decide to feed yourself. That's exactly what you want to hear from a dietitian. Dietitian approves stress reduction technique. Eating. You can eat just because. I don't know about you, but that kind of sounds like approving eating for emotional support. Thinness is not fitness, while fatness is also not fitness. I don't really have much else to say about her dietitian, but yeah, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, her deceptive tactics don't end there. No, this is only the start of it. With Tess, I've noticed the pattern that she attaches herself and even straight up hijacks different protected and vulnerable groups to make herself look better. I mean, she did it with the whole body positive movement. Body positive movement started for people who had disabilities or who had limbs that were amputated or who had things like stretch marks and cellulite, not for, you know, morbidly obese and overweight people to say, you know, health at every size. Let's go with the most popular one right now. This is the LGBT group that she now has attached herself to. Apparently, she's queer, whatever that means. She regularly professes her attraction to straight biological men, but also simultaneously having some weird agenda against them. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I just see this pattern with certain celebrities. It's like, I definitely know the next thing to come is for Tess Holliday to announce that she's non-binary. I wonder which other celebrity has gone down that path. That's another video in itself. Just another attention-seeking loudmouth. Like, just pack it in, yeah. The weirdest thing I came across is apparently she has a sensory disorder. Now, I'm not her physician. I'm not here to say that she does or she doesn't have a sensory disorder, but it's the way that she presents it. Like this tweet.
My friend just called me and they were taping up boxes in the background and I had to hang up because it's like literal nails on a chalkboard. Sensory disorders are real. Don't be embarrassed to tell your loved ones. I gotta go if it's too overwhelming.
I don't know. To me, it just screams woe is me. This one really grinds my gears. Like, truly, as soon as I noticed this, I just completely made up my mind about Tess Holliday. She firmly has her grips on Black issues. Now, I know she's trying to be an ally and, you know, to help with the cause and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, there's that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, her fat campaign or body positive campaign, F Your Beauty Standards, features mostly very fat Black people, all in the pursuit of diversity. Yeah, here's the thing. We do not need any more of that representation. You are not doing us any favors with this. In fact, it just feeds into the whole lazy, gluttonous, unattractive stereotype of Black people. Stop it.
Hercules, Hercules, Hercules.
And speaking of the F Your Beauty Standards thing, like, I just find it very interesting how it's okay to crap on thinness and health and fitness and wellness, but, you know, we can put on makeup, we can show skin and nudity, we can have hair extensions, we can even go for cosmetic procedures. But, you know, everything else, F your beauty standards. It's F your beauty standards pertaining to weight, but you adhere to every single other one. Like, I feel this video is going to get flagged because of all this nudity I'm showing, so leave a like. I just think this whole movement is very toxic and it's very misleading. I don't truly believe that she loves the size that she's at. I don't truly believe that she's portraying herself to be as fit and healthy as she likes to come across as. I think that she's deeply insecure. I think that she loves to attach herself to the next popular thing to get attention and to validate herself. And, you know, it's very unhealthy. Like, girl, get some help, like proper help.
Stop it. Get some help.
I would like to end with this one thing. I honestly think that if her doctor had diagnosed her with a binging disorder as opposed to an ED that's commonly associated with thinness, I don't think she would have been so vocal and public about it. You know, going on this hobo daytime TV roller coaster, like, I just don't think she would do it. I think it's very disingenuous of her to do this. I think that she's being dishonest with herself and her fans, and I think it's very toxic. Like, I don't understand it, and I feel like more people should be able to call out her BS without being labeled as fat phobic or any like other crap like that. You know, I do think she's a beautiful woman, but that's besides the point. I want the best for her. I want her to be healthy. Oh, sorry, I'm not allowed to use that word. She doesn't like the word health, you know, except for when people use it to describe her hair. Sorry, last one, like, I had to get my system. But yeah, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts about this interesting topic. I found it very interesting researching. Like, did you know what atypical anorexia was? Did you know that people who were overweight could suffer from anorexia? Make sure you comment and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.